Without further ado, it is my great pleasure for episode 2 of We Love Our Heart, the podcast, to welcome Zoe Harcombe. How are you, Zoe, this wonderful Friday morning?
It might be where you are. It's
Well, it
absolutely
is.
chucking it down where I
Oh,
am.
really? Oh, I'm
Yeah, it's
sorry.
still a lovely morning, don't get me wrong, but it is chucking it down.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, it's interesting because your name has popped up in so many occasions in the last few years that I've been, helping or working with, heart illnesses and heart issues. And then I saw you on a podcast, and I can't remember whether it was Jesse Chappell, so it was one of the big guys who was interviewing you, and I just sat there with my mouth aghast, saying, "Oh, this woman, she's talking so much sense. Oh my God, this is perfect. I've got to reach out to her. I've got to." And I was like, oh my God, it's Zoe Harcombe. I know all about you and I subscribe to your newsletter and everything. And I'm like, oh, finally. And I know from some of the other people that I talk to, they, like Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, one of my all-time biggest heroes. He often
And
talks
mine.
about you.
Yeah, and
And
mine.
so it's fabulous that I reached out to you, and it's fabulous that we're here today and you have a little time to us. And we want to talk a little bit about you and your journey, and then we'll talk about how we can come together in helping people with their heart issues and understand their heart issues better. I think that's what we basically like to do together. So please, Zoe, tell me a little bit about your backstory, and then we'll kick in.
Gosh, my backstory, try and keep it quick. First interest in anything health was when my big brother developed type 1 diabetes. When he was a teenager, I was a teenager, and suddenly he's injecting himself twice a day with this thing called insulin. The diet in the family changed. It wasn't quite so much the high teas of my heritage and sort of more meat and two veg. The advice wasn't bad back then.
Mm.
Then went to Cambridge University, mathematician, love numbers, love analysing things, love
Oh,
things that don't
brilliant.
make sense, and started to look around me and like people are starting to get overweight and obese, and I don't know anyone who wants to be overweight or obese. So it's kind of that curiosity then kind of stuck in my mind. I left Cambridge, got what my mum would call a proper job in management consultancy, then ended up working for Mars, big food, and then worked for SmithKline Beecham, big drugs. So I've
Oh,
seen both of them from the inside. My career, I had a great first career, as I would call it. Ended up as VP, Vice President for Human Resources, for large parts of the world in big organizations. So I've managed to travel the world with my work. Human resources, obviously, a fascination with people and why people behave in certain ways and how we can get people working effectively together. And then about 2010, it's like, no, I've got a burning passion. I need a second career. I need to get out of the corporate world. I am fascinated by diet and health, and I really want to understand that more. I'd already written 3 books by then, so kind of it wasn't. While I was an HR director, I'd written a book in 2004 and then 2 more in 2008. So there was kind of a stepping stone to leave. But as Ivor will say, he did exactly the same from the corporate world. It's a big plunge because by the time you've got to that kind of level in an organisation, you're on a fabulous salary, fabulous bonus, fabulous pension. And then you just think, no, there's got to be more to life. I want to do what I want to do. As you know, because you very kindly subscribe, what do I do now? I basically analyse academic papers so that you don't have to. So, what came in overnight, the latest epidemiology, nutrition nonsense on vegans, vegetarians, pescatarians, poultry eaters, meat eaters, and cancer, published in I think it's the British Journal of Cancer or whatever. And I look at that kind of study and then write up a Monday note. It goes out every Monday. It has done for 15 years, basically so that you don't have to go through it. And I'm, independent. I'm not funded by anyone, and I'll tell you it how it is. So if it does conclude that meat is going to make you drop dead, I will tell you. But that isn't the case. And if it does conclude that fruit and veg are going to save your life, I would tell you that as well. But of course, it doesn't find that because that's just not nutritional truth. So that's me. That's what I do.
okay, that's brilliant. Well, we could kick off with that point. I mean, um, having worked with Ivor, obviously, I would say that I'm in quite heavily into the low carb, high fat area. But with We Love Our Heart, we've dealt with a lot of people who are mostly in the same camp. But then again, there are some vegetarians who've come and have had very good blood results. I was talking about this the other day to Dr. Sarah Myhill. She said, yeah, they might have good blood results on the surface, but they're probably not looking deep down enough. And I tend uh, just like you, I tend to be agnostic when it comes to, the dietary recommendations information. I know what works for me, and I know everybody is an individual, but I also know that if you do stick to a vegetarian and vegan diet, there are certainly things you should be doing on top of that to compensate for some of the amino acids you're not getting, right? We could kick off there, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between vegan and vegetarian. So, vegan is harmful. I mean, there's just no other way of putting it. There are so many nutrients that are only available in animal form, animal foods, in the form that we need them. So, take vitamin A, it comes in the form of retinol in animals, or it comes in carotene in plants. The body needs retinol. Now, yes, some people can convert from carotene to retinol, not everyone. And the conversion rate is poor. So, if you're not getting enough retinol, then you're going to start getting things like eye damage, eyesight problems, and all the rest of it. B12 is only found in animal foods. D3 is found in animal foods and sunshine. D2 is the plant version. Whenever there are two nutrients, or there's a nutrient like iron and zinc that are more bioavailable, the body can absorb them a lot better. That's always from the animal form. So, in terms of the sort of the hierarchy of problems, please don't be vegan, because you're not going to get the essential fats in the form that you need. You're not going to get EPA and DHA, you might get ALA. As you say, you're not going to get the amino acids, because it's only animal foods that have got the essential amino acids, the ones that we must consume in our diet. That's what essential means in nutrition. It's only animal foods that have got those essential amino acids, and in the right quantities. So vegans will say, oh, but I can get this from lentils and I can get this from corn chips and all the rest of it. Yeah, you can, but then you're going to get more of this one and less of that one. You're not going to get the balance. And you've really got to work hard to try to combine foods to get it as good as you can. And then you're still not getting retinol and D3 and B12 and heme iron and absorbable zinc and all the rest of it. So, just don't. Vegan is a disaster, please. I've got a video out online. Should we be vegan? The short answer is no. Please don't do that. Well formulated vegetarian diets get a whole heap better, because if you are eating a good amount of dairy products, good number of eggs, you can get some good nutrients. You're not getting the heme iron that you would get in seafood and red meat. You're not getting the zinc really that you'd get in those foods as well. But you're certainly doing a lot better than the vegans are. Pescatarian is a good diet. I do know people who, for animal reasons, maybe just can't face the thought of eating that lamb that they see in the field. They do say, okay, I can get to fish, but I really can't get to meat. It's like, you're going to do pretty well. You're going to get your essential fats from the oily fish. Make sure you're having oily fish, not just white fish. You're pretty much going to get whatever you need. Just make sure you do have a decent amount of fish in your diet, and still eggs and dairy and so on. And of course, the omnivores, it's easier for them because they've got everything: the red meat, the offal, they've got all the options. So it's sort of different degrees of healthfulness that you can get from eating different amounts of animal foods.
All right, brilliant. Thanks for that. And let's do, while we're on the subject of myth busting, so to speak, because I know, we don't have to go into narrative. I know that the whole vegetarian and vegan thing has been driven, shall we say, promoted. But it's really funny how it's become so intrinsic in people's thinking. I mean, for example, I talk about superfoods. What I think are superfoods, and I was saying to my mother-in-law, she's not silly, she's intelligent, and I said to her, "Oh, I'm looking forward on Monday. I'm cooking. I've got beef liver. Beef liver is from what I consider to be a superfood, and I found a really good way to prepare it so that it's quite palatable, because I know it's not everybody's cup of tea." And she looked at me and said, "Oh, you have no idea how much toxins I can't believe you're doing that. You have no idea how many toxins are going to absorb there." And I'm like, I think that has been debunked. That the liver is there to filter out the toxins, which then get washed away. The liver itself doesn't contain the toxins. I'm on the right track, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are people that say, at the point the animal dies, there's even glycogen in the liver, because there's glycogen in our liver, kind of thing. So you actually can get a carbohydrate content from liver, which is quite interesting to me.
Right.
And yes, it's kind of like fish. We know that there are fantastic nutrients in fish, but we also know that we've kind of screwed up our seas, and that we've got heavy metals in there in quantities that we would rather not have. So there's nothing perfect. You know, fruit and vegetables are absolutely covered in pesticides unless you can grow your own in your garden and or get a really sort of good organic source or something. So I don't think there's anything perfect. But in terms of nutrition, so when I sort of debunk 5 a day, for example, and I say, okay, you know, here's a typical 5 a day. So I don't know, here's an apple, here's an orange, here's some peas, here's some carrots, here's some broccoli or something. You know, I'll pick some good 5 a day things, and then I'll pick what I know to be absolutely super nutritionally fantastic. And the first food that I would put in my basket is liver. You know, my hubby wouldn't necessarily go beef liver, he might go lamb's liver, and we've got some, or chicken liver, we've got some really good sort of chicken liver pate recipes, as you say, to make it more palatable. But nutritionally, there is just nothing that can be awful, just nothing. In terms of the vitamin, particularly profile, vitamin and mineral profile that you get in that. And it's kind of why when you look back, you know, if I went to stay with grandma, once a week we had liver and onions, whether I
Yeah.
liked it or not. You know, once a week I had liver and onions, and that actually gives you enough vitamin A in the form that you need it because it's incredibly rich in retinol. That's your eyesight taken care of. And how did grandma know that? Well, probably from her mum and from her mum and from her mum. And it was just one of those things that got passed down. So when I look at how we used to eat, you know, say once a week liver and onions, once a week oily fish, and because nobody was rich back then, it was tinned sardines on a bit of toast or whatever.
Yeah.
Once a week you had a Sunday roast or whatever. You know, we used to know how to eat, and we just kind of lost that over the last few decades.
There's one thing. There's one thing also that your grandmother or your mother used to insist we had as children, which has become completely unpopular now, and that is cod liver oil.
Yeah, yeah,
And yet, cod liver oil, actually, funny enough, in Germany, I can actually buy cod liver in tins. It's very cheap as well. It's
yeah.
really reasonable, and I mean, it's not very palatable, but it's a really good way of getting that. And just to wrap up on this a little bit, I mean, I believe or think about three superfoods, and I mean, superfood is a label that has also been bandied around across the shop. Most of it is marketing, but I kind of like now. My top three, and please share me yours, is sardines, beef liver, and eggs. I think those are what I would consider, well, generally thought of that I would consider superfoods.
Yeah, they're pretty good actually. I mean, I'd say any offal, you know, liver particularly, any oily fish. Yeah, eggs are probably pretty good as well, actually. Yeah, I mean, anything from the animal food kingdom. You know, and people sort of say, oh, you shouldn't be eating dairy, you know, it's sort of the food for the calf or whatever. And I'm like, well, why has it got literally just about everything that I need in it?
Yeah.
Why is it just almost such a complete food? You know, why is it that you know, I know they say, well, babies should be on breast milk up until about 2, but then beyond that, you can't digest it, so you shouldn't be having it. Well, there's a really ethnic angle to that, which is really interesting. So if somebody came to me and said, I think I'm dairy intolerant, and they're Asian, I would say, I think you're probably right. Because the incidence of lactose intolerance among the Asian ethnic populations is massive. It's like 95%. But if a white Northern European is coming to me saying, I think I'm dairy intolerant, I'd say, I think you're probably not, because it just flips the other way around. It's like 5%. So if we're not intolerant to it, it's got a fantastic vitamin profile, particularly the B vitamins, and has also got the complete proteins that we're looking for. I'm thinking, why does it make sense that you're telling me not to eat that, but you are telling me to eat, I don't know, legumes that come over on a ship from Morocco that are just not
Yeah.
indigenous to my environment?
Okay. But okay, just it's quite interesting. But let's just stay on the vitamin side. I mean, we've mentioned Dr. Malcolm Kendrick a couple of times, and one of the things that has been really fascinated about him is this idea of a vitamin C and vitamin C as a clotting mechanism or as an anti-clotting mechanism in your blood, because obviously as I explained at the beginning, as I've had 2 heart attacks,
Mm.
there is some risk of clotting, I suppose. There's something going on in my system that doesn't lend to that very well. I do have quite up until recently quite high LP little a, for example, and that has always been considered the sore thumb in my blood results, if you like. But again, if we think about the role of vitamin C and where you can get it from, that humans don't produce it, it's only animals do, and it's also tied up with vitamin D as well, I believe. the sunshine, which is also an interesting cultural thing when you mentioned about Asians. But I'll let you talk about what your take on vitamin C, clotting, and vitamin D.
Well, vitamin D first. I mean, some people say, is it a vitamin? Is it a hormone? Do we actually know entirely what it is? What we do know is that it's absolutely vital for so many different things in our body. And I think it's just generally been overlooked. It's kind of almost, oh, we don't want you to have a vitamin option of being well. But I always work really hard to make sure that my vitamin D is at a really good level. And I test it every now and again just to check that it is. I'm like Ivor. Ivor has come to stay with us. If the sun is shining outside, I'm sat there out on the patio without my warm woolly jumper on, making sure that I'm getting sun on my limbs at any time of day that it will be of benefit. I make sure I get enough vitamin D3. That's what our body needs. I do eat oily fish, but in the winter I also make sure that I supplement with vitamin D because I mean living in the UK, we just can't get enough vitamin D for at least 10 months of the year. And
Yeah.
unless you're sat out when the sun is in the right position in the sky, which is around sort of 12 till 2, in the middle of summer, you're really not getting enough if you tend to be UK based. So vitamin D is vital, and we know it's vital now for heart disease, for cancer, for just general health. When COVID came along, there were some randomised trials that were done where they took people arriving at hospital quite unwell and they randomised some of them to a massive intake of vitamin D. I mean, it was IV level vitamin D, 50,000 units on admission, and then looked at what happened to them. And it might only have been studies with 50 people or 100 people, but enough to get significant results on the randomisations. The ones on the mega vitamin D, none of them died. And very few of them progressed from arriving at hospital to ICU, the intensive
Mm.
care unit. In the other arm, all bets were off. Some of them died, some of them progressed to, and we knew this really early on. And we had an MP in the UK trying to talk in Parliament about, hey, isn't vitamin D something that can really help here? And of course, it was like, oh no, we can't possibly have anything natural that might help people because we've just got this massive drive to get this injection into 8 billion people around the world. So you're just not allowed to have any alternative. So it was very, very sinister time in terms of the
Mm.
advice. Well, the best thing they could have done the second that this hit, whatever it was, get out in the sun. This, oh, you're not allowed out of your house for more than an hour a day. No, the opposite. Get out in the sun and start taking a mega vitamin D tablet. Just every one of you walk into your chemist now and pick up a tablet. Of course, they didn't want to do that. Vitamin C, I know less about. One of the interesting things, I mean, I say to people, take vitamin C to the level that your body will tolerate. Now, I know there are IV options for vitamin C. So, particularly now in things like cancer, you've got people like William Mackis and I think Thomas Seyfried and other people looking at what intravenous level of vitamin C can the body cope with because it's not then going into the digestive system, so you can cope with a lot more. Now, if you have a lot of vitamin C orally, the body gets to the point that it just said, I can't take any more, and you will actually get a runny bowels. So think about children when they used to go scrumping in times when children used to play outside and they'd eat loads of apples off the tree when they're in season, and then they'd have an upset tummy the next day because they've had too much fibre, too much vitamin C, too much running around in the garden having fun and all the rest of it, and they would have a bit of an upset tummy the next day. But I mean, you should see how many grams of vitamin C. Some people, start low, start on maybe 100 milligrams, then go up to maybe half a gram, 500 milligrams, then you might get to a gram. You should be able to take a few grams in the winter and for your bowels to be able to tolerate that. And then you're getting a really good level of vitamin C in your body. Now, the other thing about vitamin C is people will say, well, you really only find vitamin C in plants. So all you carnivores, you're obviously going to be dying of scurvy. Well, they're not dying of scurvy. I've spoken to Ken Berry and Sean Baker and Anthony Chaffee, and they're not dying of scurvy. So a few things. One, you can actually get vitamin C from some animal food. So you do get it from things like the thymus gland and the liver. In fact, last time I looked, liver had more vitamin C than an apple, which is quite a fun nutrition fact. The second thing is if you're not eating carbohydrates, carbohydrates place a great demand on vitamin B3 and also vitamin C for their digestion. So if you're not eating carbohydrates, you need a heck of a lot less vitamin C. And all the signs are from looking at these carnivores that have been carnivore for many, many years. Actually, do you know what? you don't need any plant foods and you don't get scurvy. So experiments like that really turn on its head what we think we know about nutrition. And then we have to revise what we think we know. We can't look at the carnivores and say, oh yes, but we know if you don't eat plants you get scurvy. It's like, well, now we don't know if you don't eat
Hmm.
plants you get scurvy, because there's people not eating plants and they're not getting scurvy. So we have to rethink our belief systems when we find something that is just in direct contradiction to them.
Okay, and in fact, on that, I 2 weeks ago, I had my latest set of blood results, and they're probably the best that I've had in, I don't know, the last 15 years or something.
Brilliant.
Um, I mean, okay, you could say, well, what exactly are you looking at? But I certainly look at vitamin D, and I certainly look at my triglyceride and HDL balance. And I also, what was very interesting for me was my LP little a had dropped to just beyond the what they consider the benchmark level to be high. And it used to be almost 3 times the
Wow.
benchmark level. So that has really come down, which is, I guess, decreased my risk factor. But that's it. But again, and it's been mainly on a carnivore diet. I mean, in my family comes from a part of Germany where potatoes are the staple diet, and I would be kicked off the dining room table if I was to not eat potatoes at Sunday lunch. So there is, I do mix and match a little bit with vegetables, but predominantly steak, and I swear by it. It's been great for me, and I've talked as well. I used to be like an endurance athlete, and our motto was also you have to carb load, right? Before you go out training, you've got to carb load, and by competition, you've got to carb load. And one of the things that is potentially quite dangerous for me was that I was in that competition where I had the issue was that I was carb loaded, sweat a lot, and it was a very hot day. And I
Mm,
wasn't supplementing with electrolytes, and I was also fairly bad at even taking enough water
mm,
during training and competition. And one of the things that was mentioned to me recently is that magnesium and electrolytes is one of the
mm.
main things that one should be very careful of as well, especially when one is training on high intensive interval training or high intensive interval training as well. Um, so fine. But the other thing was that I'm very lucky is that my doctor is old enough to know that when she looks at my LDL cholesterol level, she says, well, Mark, I can remember the time when that was considered normal. Now,
Mm.
of course, it's considered, my classic cardiologist freaks out every time and says, "Oh, what's happening with the statins? What's happening with the PSK9? We have to get you on more drugs."
Oh
And I'm like,
wow.
"It's all good. It's all good. I'm fine, thank you."
Yeah.
So I mean, that is always a big discussion. We don't need to go there now, but again, I think what we started off at the very beginning, it's been my journey and my drive to try and reduce the number of medications that I am taking to almost zero. Well, it is virtually zero. I take aspirin every now and again. Um, but this is where you know as well that the medical profession, the pharma, they put you on a one size fits all cocktail,
Mm.
especially if you've had an incident. They will say, "Oh, we will need to protect you now. You need to take this, and this." And as a small anecdote, I remember coming out of hospital and then going to a chemist with my list of prescriptions, and I was stood there watching the cash register, and it came up to it was like 700 quid, euros, right?
Whoa.
And I didn't realize it was mine. I said, wow. I said, the last customer's really gone to town, right? And they're like, oh no, Mr. Felsted, these are yours.
Oh
I'm like,
wow.
seriously? I'm like, how long is this going to last for? And then oh, this is probably a month's worth of medications.
Oh
And
wow.
just the thought, I mean, I'm privately insured, so my insurance would pay the bill. But nevertheless, the thought of me having to pay 700 euros a month
Yeah.
to stay alive just
Yeah.
really freaked me out. I was like, this can't be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of that is free over here. So people would just walk in, cash all of that prescription. I say free, it's free to the person. I pay for it as the
Yeah.
taxpayer.
No, well, yeah, there's no such thing as a free health service in
Yeah.
actual fact.
Yeah.
And you
Never.
don't want to know how much I pay now for my private health insurance as well. But good. My wife always says you got me your money's worth.
Very good.
Be in intensive care twice for 10 days and then like a 3 month cancer treatment. She says you got your money worth.
Crikey.
So try and pay up with that. So we touched upon diet, and I think we're both on the same page there. What other things? I mean, I was talking to your husband before because he was talking about he prepares the green room, and I said to him, "Do you know what a green room is?" He was like, Well, no, actually. And actually, the green room, just a little anecdote here, it comes from Shakespearean and theatre times that they used to fill a room with plants where actors would warm up because the plants were given oxygen-rich atmosphere and they knew this would strengthen their voice beforehand.
Ah,
And I just wanted to loop that around because you see, I am actually in my green room because interesting enough, and I do go some down some interesting rabbit holes, even as far as Ira is concerned. And I just repainted my sleeping area with green paint, and I put some powder in it, which is called Quelby powder from my friend Hans. And I came across it because it re-energizes the water that I drink. I'm a bit of a water geek, and he also uses it in powder to create a energetic aura. And it's, whether you are into this or not, but I can honestly say in the last 3 weeks I've been sleeping like a baby. It's
oh,
really,
very good, very
it's
good.
very, very interesting, and he has used it in a couple of clinics in Ireland who've used it, and he's just come back from some fascia training as well, where he's learned a little bit more of these alternative methods. I tend to like to look outside of the box. So, but back to you, what are the other things that we could talk about? Statins versus PSK9 or sardine diet, fasting, intermittent fasting. What is your favorite go-to at the moment?
I don't do that kind of thing actually. It's more just the basics. I mean, when you said I drink a lot of water, my first thought was, I hope you're not drinking too much water because then
No.
you're just peeing out your nutrients.
Yes.
The simple rule is just make sure there's a bit of colour in your urine. It shouldn't be yellow, clearly, and it shouldn't be like it's water. It should have a bit of colour, otherwise you're kind of drinking too much. I'm really not fanatical about things. I think one of the big risks in this area, and when I speak at conferences, I meet a lot of people. I mean, sometimes there are 1,000 people at the conference, and everyone wants to grab you in the break and tell you their story and tell you what they're doing. And my sort of overwhelming takeaway from that is, kind of, guys, I don't want to say this to you, but you're all a little bit obsessive and you really need to chill out a bit more because it's not doing you a great deal of good. I know it's really difficult when health is so important, and particularly when you've had a really serious issue. It's really difficult then to chill out about something. And a lot of people at these conferences, they're there, they found sort of what we do in our world because they had a health issue. So it
Yeah.
is difficult for them. But I see people saying, "Oh, I won't eat after 2 o'clock," or "I'll make sure I fast for 36 hours once a week," or "I do this once a month," or something. And I'm like, all of these rules are stressful.
Yeah.
We're not designed to have that many rules that we put on ourselves. I think, just do the basics, relax around it as much as you can. I'm not carnivore, I'm not even keto. I had a croissant the other day because I was in Italy and it just looked absolutely bloody marvellous. And it was
Why
bloody
wouldn't you?
marvellous.
Absolutely.
And if I'm in near a gelateria or whatever, I'm going to eat gelato. I mean, I'm really not kind of religious about that. I don't have a metabolic issue. I'm not overweight. I'm not facing sort of any disease. I know that people who are have to be a little bit more strict, but kind of don't put too many rules on yourself. So what are the basics? Eat well, but not obsessively. Don't be sedentary. Much more important than exercising. I mean, if you haven't looked into it, you might want to look into the relationship between intense exercise and cardiovascular disease. Professor Tim Noakes has looked at
Yeah.
some of this. The people
Yeah.
I know who've had heart disease, quadruple bypasses, stents, and all the rest of it are you. Super fit, slim, young, intensely athletic people. So I mean, I can put them on more than one hand. People I know who've almost died, who've been extreme exercisers. And Tim will say, I look back now and my carb loading to fuel that intense exercise has not done me any good. I don't think we're designed to be running Ironmen and triathlons and marathons and all the rest of it. And I know I have so many people in my life who do this. I'm like, you're bonkers.
Mm.
Stretch yourself mentally. Why do you have to stretch yourself physically the whole time? So eat well, don't be obsessive, don't be sedentary, obviously don't smoke. Drinking is not as bad as people think. Don't be stupid with alcohol and don't have too much of it too often. But a glass of red wine is actually very relaxing and very sociable and all the rest of it. What else would I say? Stay a healthy weight or whatever. Have purpose in life. Have something that gets you up in the morning. Have something that you love doing. Have
And
great
community is
family.
another, a community is another one there
Community.
as a, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
Oh,
Malcolm swears by faith. Um,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think he's
Many people
particularly,
do.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's not particularly religious himself, but he'll say when he looks at the data, faith is so important. So laugh a lot, have fun in your life. Don't take everything too seriously. So that would be me, like chill a little bit more, people in this space.
Yeah, Zoe, thank you so much for that. And we can wrap up that because I absolutely agree. You know, we with the We Love Our Heart, we've been doing various groups over the last over 100 people over the last 5 years or so, and we've all kind of realized that I started it off with maybe an obsession with metrics. Like look at your sleep values, look at your blood scores, look at your HRVs, look at this, that, and the other. And just as you say, it became obvious to many of us that we were just stressing so much on all of these different values, and that's just an additional stress you don't need. And two of the things I've learned is that stress is one of the main drivers anyway of heart
Yes.
disease, whether it's, just stressing about that. And the second one is, which I'm sure you'll agree with, and we've touched on it, is sleep. Getting good
Yeah.
sleep
Yeah.
is
Sorry. Yeah. That
probably
should have been it. I knew I was fishing for one.
no, no,
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm just
Sleep
saying
is
that's one of the
vital.
things that I've learned is, and
Yeah.
this is why I took the
Yeah.
made the effort with the room just to improve the quality of sleep,
Yeah.
because I am a strong believer now that your body will heal itself if you give it the right ingredients, and one of
Yeah.
those ingredients is a good is sleep, because sleep is the only time you have to heal. And
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, like you say, I'm a follower of, not a fan, but a follower of, I think his name's Ryan Johnson, who's this biohacker, the
Oh,
guy who
okay.
wants to live for
Yeah.
200 years, and
Oh,
he's
he's
completely
bonkers.
OCD. I mean, he has
Yeah.
some good ideas, red light therapy, hyperbaric therapy. I agree with, I'm into the benefits of those. I can see that. But on the other hand, like you said, having a nice glass of wine. I've tried, I've been dry for a couple of years, didn't really notice any great benefit, to be honest. I have to be honest. And like today, we drink just at weekends, and I'm looking forward to going out with my wife this evening and sharing a beer or a glass of wine together, because it puts us in that social frame and relax after the week. So absolutely agree with you. Common sense prevails. There are various things that we shouldn't do and some things that we should concentrate on, like real food. But yes, I think I've zoomed out a lot from the micromanaging, if you like, of diet and blood values and things like this. I still keep an eye on them, but I am actually a lot more relaxed and maybe more spiritual meditation, awakening, whatever you want to call it. I don't have a faith as such, but again, the community is a big thing,
Yeah.
and I have to say, I'm not trying to plug us, but We Love Our Heart is also a fantastic community. There's a lot of love in that community, and that's also one of the things that keeps us all going, I think. So, Zoe, I think we've done our half an hour. It's been fantastic talking to you. It's been fantastic meeting you for the first time. So, I hope we'll keep in touch. I shall let you know when this is going out. It'll be a week or so, and then maybe you can share it. But otherwise, thank you so much. And what can I say? It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.